Thank you, Paul, for joining us. We're thrilled to have you here today. Paul Nardone is the CEO of BFY Brands, as a proven consumer packaged goods expert with over 25 years of experience successfully leading and growing innovative food and beverage brands. Prior to joining BFY Brands, Paul was a partner at Sherbrooke Capital, a growth capital private equity firm. While at Sherbrooke, Nardone focused on driving growth across their healthy food and beverage portfolio, including serving on the board of directors for Angie's Boom Chicka Pop. Prior to that, Nardone served as the CEO of Immaculate Baking Co. from 2008 to 2013, where he led the company to become the top-selling natural brand in the $2 billion refrigerated dough category before it was acquired by General Mills. From 2004 to 2008, Nardone was the CEO of Stirrings, a leading brand of premium cocktail mixers, later acquired by Diageo. And Nardone's experience in the better for you space began in 1993 at Annie's Homegrown, where he served as CEO and executed a comprehensive growth strategy that created an industry-leading brand platform over the course of his 11 years leading that company. I know I have some Annie's in my cupboard right now. Nardone holds a BA from Tufts University and an MBA from Columbia Business School. Paul, like I said, we're thrilled to have you. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us and providing perspective on changes in food industry as they've spanned not only this time, but also the decades of experience that you've had in working with companies. We really appreciate you doing this, and I will turn it over to you for the presentation. Just as a quick reminder, let me know when I can advance your slides.
Well, thanks, Lauren, for the great introduction, and thanks for the invitation to join you all today. Why don't we just flip right to the agenda here, because I know we're on a very tight timeline, so I'm just going to jump right in, and I'll touch a little bit on my background and talk about the business that I've been running the last 5 years, which is the BFY Brands, Better For You Brands, and then get into the main topic. So you can flip to the experience page, but Lauren already kind of told you where I went to school and some of the businesses I ran, but just starting with, I grew up, I'm a Boston guy, so I really appreciate Branchfoods and how they are celebrating a lot of the brands that originate in Boston. And when I was a freshman at Tufts University in 1986, I started a business. Ironically, it was a snack food company. So I've kind of gone full circle in the last 30 years back to running a snack company. But that business turned into much more than I ever anticipated. And it ended up jumpstarting a 30-plus year career in food and beverage space. And starting my own business opened up a lot of doors. The first big door it opened for me was at Annie's. When I joined Annie's in 1993, it was practically a startup. And, I led Annie's for 11 years. It was an incredible ride, leading the company through its early growth years. And then went on to lead 2 other businesses. The Stirrings cocktail mix was the first premium cocktail mix in the market, and Immaculate Baking was really the first natural alternative to Pillsbury. After selling that business, as Lauren said, I spent a little bit of time at Sherbrooke Capital, but never actually thought I'd go back into a CEO role. But I got an interesting call in the summer of 2015 and had an opportunity to take a new CEO position at a roll-up snack company called Better For You Brands that was acquired by a global private equity group called Premier. So that's what I've been doing for the last 5 years. I'm going to tell you on the next slide here, Lauren, if you want to move it. A little bit about BFY Brands. One of the things that attracted me was this unique patented technology platform whereby we can use compression technology to produce a great tasting, very healthy profile chip. And for those of you that are familiar with popcorners, you know that it has a very distinctive crunch profile, and that is due to our patented technology. So we have 3 manufacturing plants. We're a self-manufacturer. We have 2 plants in Hudson Valley, New York, 1 in Belgium, about 850 employees. This year we'll do around 200 million in net sales. For the last 18 months or so, we've been kind of darling of the category in terms of leading the category in growth. So that's been exciting. The product sells in over 50 countries, and I guess all that success brought about some attention. We were recently acquired by PepsiCo, and we're going through an integration right now with the Frito-Lay snack division. So that's a little bit about the business. And let me just pause there and say, clearly popcorn is maybe a bigger company than some of you are running right now. But for all of you who are just starting out, I just want to say that I know where you are today. You know, I was there myself. I know how unsettling it can be running an early stage business or a startup in such a period of uncertainty. So when I thought about this session, it made me think back to some other really difficult periods that I managed through. And I feel really old in sharing this, but I've been through the recession of 1990 to 92, which were my first 2 years out of college when I was managing my own startup. Incredibly difficult time. I was CEO at Annie's during the September 11th terrorist attack. I was CEO at Immaculate during the Great Recession of 2007, 2009. So those all were disruptive periods, but we got through it. And we'll get through this as well. So don't lose faith, because I know this can be very unsettling in terms of what's going on. If you go to the next slide here, I thought it might be helpful here. I just have 2 slides here to kind of focus on. And the first slide, I thought it might be helpful to share with you what I'm focused on through this difficult period. And then the second slide, maybe provoke some thinking about some near-term and long-term implications here. But it goes without saying here, the first bullet point, but health and safety of our employees is my top priority. So our manufacturing sites right now are running 24/7, and we're doing all we can to keep up with demand. But we're doing this while we're also taking an abundance of caution to ensure that our employees feel safe at work and have the flexibility that they need in their paid time off schedules. And we've taken many other measures to put them in place to help ensure the safety and well-being of all of our employees. So it's something that I've personally spent a lot of time focusing on, really looking at all of the touch points that our employees have at our facilities and looking at them critically and challenging, you know, how we can do things differently to embrace all the important measures of social distancing and all of the other preventive measures that include PPE and other things that we're doing in our plants. But it has been truly inspiring to see how our people are coming together. And we're especially grateful to our frontline associates, the ones who make and move our products all around the country. You know, they truly are the backbone of our organization. And we appreciate the role that they play, that we all play in supporting America's food supply. So moving on here, I firmly believe that we all have a responsibility to serve our communities, especially in times of crisis like we're in today. And in order to support this, we've shifted resources to help with our community support. And, you know, there's not a whole lot of marketing going on right now across the board. And we've taken some of our resources from that department and told them to focus on exploring who needs our help. And in just the last 3 weeks, we've donated truckloads of popcorners, over 200,000 bags, in fact, to support frontline organizations, you know, in 30 hospitals in the Northeast, and to support other groups like City Harvest in New York and Greater Boston YMCA, who serve at-risk communities. And we're trying to do our part in our own way, and we think that's important to remain focused on that. It's not just focus internally on your business, but focus externally on your communities and see how you can make a positive impact. I've put some other call outs here on the page, and just to summarize a few of them, you know, we talk about being proactive and decisive, and, you know, that might be a given at all times, but in times of crisis like this, I think it's especially important not to drag your feet on things. And we were lucky in that a small team of us in the management team identified some signals, I'd say 4 or 5 weeks ago, that seemed to indicate the beginning of the stockpiling phenomenon that we've seen out in the marketplace. And that enabled us to make some, you know, very quick decisions on changing our staffing policies, changing our production strategies. So, you know, this is not the time to take days upon days to kind of think about some solutions that need to happen more immediately. So I encourage all of you to, no matter what size business you're running, be decisive and take action. You know, that's incredibly important. I've put a note in here about simplifying things as well. I mean, things are hard enough right now in the marketplace, And, I've been finding myself looking at ways that we can simplify things wherever possible for our people. I mean, this is an incredibly stressful time. So as a manager, as a general manager, you want to look at opportunities to kind of de-stress the situation however you can. So we've taken a lot of steps to simplify our business model during this difficult time. And I can come back and speak about some of these in more detail if you have some questions at the end. I put best practices on here, developing best practices. And what I mean by that is that, we are all experiencing this for the first time in our lives. But let's face it, this is probably not going to be the last time that we experience something like this. So I've been trying to be mindful of being a continuous learning and an adapting organization so that we can come out of this better prepared than we were before going into it. The last bullet point on this page, I really want to stress how important it is, to look for silver linings. I mean, let's face it, it's bad right now. People are dying. We're all exposed to so many sad and heartbreaking stories. It's really, really easy to get down right now, and that's only natural. And on top of things, business is tough. On top of everything that's going on around us in our communities and society, business is really tough out there right now. But I'm here to tell you that it's really, really important for you as whether you're doing a startup or managing a larger company, it's really important for you to look for some silver linings. I think it's one of the ways that I'm finding myself coping with things right now, and quite frankly, keeping my sanity. It's a tough time to be running a business, and you've got to look at some silver linings. For us, the way our frontline team has pulled together, the way I've seen so many people in our organization who maybe aren't typically leaders of the organization have really stepped up into leadership roles. That's been a silver lining. Some of the moves that we made proactively to simplify our business, we have seen some real benefits from that. So I've tried to remind our organization through all these difficult times that we're seeing some real positive things happen with our business. In addition to telling them about the good that we're doing in the community, we're just trying to de-stress the situation here a little bit by showing people that, there's actually some positive things going on amidst all the bad news right now. We can flip to this last slide here. On this last slide, the theme here is I really want to encourage everybody to think critically about near-term and long-term implications. And starting first with, be prepared for this to happen again. If you're watching Dr. Fauci on the news or reading stories, I think we'd all agree it's not a question of if, but when and how severe this may come back at us. So I think we need to be ready for that. And that's why I talk about being a learning organization and embracing some best practices that we all learn from what we're going through right now. Because let's face it, it's probably going to come back and we'll be dealing with it again. With many of you being entrepreneurs, I know you're focused on bringing new products to market. And I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but the sad reality is that new product timelines will certainly be disrupted. And no one here wants to hear this or accept this, but it's the reality of where we are. And I wanted to kind of share my point of view on that. And whether you're an established company like us bringing new line extensions to the market, or whether you're a startup firm bringing an entirely new concept, I think it's going to take some time before retailers are ready to get back into their normal cycles of making purchasing decisions, and probably what's going to be more challenging, making reset decisions. So I've seen this happen before. I did reference some of the other periods of disruption that I managed through, and what I typically saw was some of these new product cycles often get impacted. So I wanted to share that with you today, so hopefully you can sort of think about some alternative ways to introduce products and test and learn during what will be an unusually difficult period for new products to come to market. Moving on to e-commerce, I'd say unless you've been living in a cave, everyone here knows e-commerce has been on a tear, for a while. But let's face it, I mean, there's a lot of people that are using e-commerce for the first time to buy groceries, okay? And even though e-commerce grocery sales have been increasing exponentially, I believe you're gonna see a step change coming out of this cycle. And we made an important decision a couple of years ago to invest in building out our e-commerce. And I don't even want to think about where we would be as a company right now if we didn't make that investment decision a while So I think many of the startups today realize the importance of e-commerce. You all realize how effective it can be, for you to get your product to market quickly and efficiently. But I think you're going to see some step change here in e-commerce, and it may become a bit more challenging for new products to come to market because you're seeing Amazon right now make some selective decisions about assortment. So they're clearly facing some capacity issues, and I think you need to be mindful of that as well. We're probably going to see employment, workplace practice types of issues come out of this. I think because we're sort of in the middle of it now, we're not hearing, too many conclusions. But as a manager, I would expect to see some legal briefs on certain imperatives going forward. So as you grow your businesses, I'll say the watch out is going to be the cost of doing business is probably going to go up after this because there's going to be, I think, a higher threshold to meet in terms of global food safety and quality guidelines. So just trying to give you sort of my perspective. So as you think about growing your business, you can really understand what some of the moving parts might be. I have supply chain on here because at times like this, any kind of weaknesses in your supply chain can really expose you in the market. And also at times like this, if you've got an incredibly strong supply chain, it can really pull you through. Now, supply chain happens to be an area that we've invested enormously in. We've paid very careful attention. And luckily, it's really held up through this incredibly stressful period. But we as branded companies or manufacturers are only as good as our supply chain partners. And I would say as you build your business, you really need to think critically about building a supply chain that can withstand a disruptive period like this. Lastly, before we get to some questions, and maybe most importantly for a group of entrepreneurs, there's going to be some ingenious ideas, some breakthrough innovation that come from all of this. That's inevitable. It's only natural. And quite frankly, I'm kind of excited to see, who comes to market with what great inventions that are really kind of spot on for what people are looking for coming out of this. And therein lies some opportunity or some silver linings for all of us to think about what we can be doing right now if our time schedules and our workload is affected by what's going on. Well, how can you shift your thinking a little bit and use this time wisely? And I think, you've got to force yourself to take a step back from whatever kind of near-term issues you're dealing with right now and really ask yourself kind of the so what of all of this. And I think it has tremendous implications on the types of products that people might be looking for going forward, implications on distribution channels. There's all sorts of near-term and long-term implications here that you all should be thinking about. So Lauren, I'll pause there and I guess we can open it up for some questions, and I'm going to take a drink of water here.
Great. Thank you for that, Paul. So we'll open it up for questions. If you've got a question, you are welcome to unmute yourself at this time or submit it to me through the chat. We're happy to take a question either way. Some of you may not be able to unmute, and so feel free to message me there if you'd like to. So one of the questions, I'll jump right in with one of the ones that was submitted. Paul, in your experience coming out of these crisis scenarios, whether this be good or bad for individual brands at this time, what are some of the things and how have you managed coming out of this? So, we don't know if there's necessarily, I wouldn't call it a light at the end of the tunnel here, but in moving into a more kind of normal grocery relationship supply chain, how have you seen the system manage that? And for individual entrepreneurs and brands that are out there, what can they be thinking about as they're doing that future planning?
Sure. I'd say, luckily there's always people in the market with a big heart and are very thoughtful and mindful about, what's going on in the marketplace. And I'd say those are the retailers that are more in the forefront of bringing innovation into their stores or platforms. And what was interesting is recently when the Natural Products Expo was canceled, the kind of community feel that came from that, there were a lot of retailers and distributors who were actually saying online in some chat room forums like, hey, I'm sorry I didn't get to meet many of you out at the show. We would normally be looking for new great things, bring them to us. So I'd say, I guess, long-winded answer to your question is entrepreneurs have to be really looking for those types of people, whether retailers and distributors, that are still open for business. And I would hate to characterize the big players as not being open, but generally speaking, I think the bigger footprint retailers are going to take a longer time. So if I were a startup or early stage entrepreneur, I'd be looking for some of the smaller retail partners. I wouldn't be swinging for the fences. And quite frankly, I think that's a safer way to play it anyway, because early on, we all have a lot to learn about how our brand performs and is perceived in the market. I think you've really got to find some quality partnerships and focus on what you can learn, and not even be concerned about how much business you're doing. It's more about quality than quantity.
And building on that, another question that came through is, do you anticipate changes to consumer consumption patterns coming out of this crisis? From, now I think people are talking about doubling down on more familiar kind of comfort legacy brands, and perhaps the adaptation of more health-oriented brands coming out of this as people start to move more and, perhaps prioritize activity and want to change their wellness after we get back outside. So kind of curious what Popcorners is anticipating.
Great question. I think there's a couple of things there I want to try to address. So will there be disruption in consumer behavior? I mean, I think shopping frequency is going to be a change of behavior. I mean, let's face it, it's going to be a while for people to choose to shop in traditional brick and mortar. I think the concern of virus exposure is still going to be on everyone's minds. Okay, so for that reason, I think that's why we're going to see step change in favor of e-commerce. But in terms of people shopping in traditional retail, I don't think, and the research will tell us this, I don't think we're going to see shopping frequency be at the level that it was at before this event. I think people will buy more, less frequently. Okay, that's one thing. You made a great point about brands, and a lot of research has sort of proven the role that brands play during times of crisis as people return to their comfort brands. Okay, I think Annie's and Popcorners are great examples of comfort food brands, and that inherently makes it a little bit more difficult for a startup brand to kind of break through, because people do want sort of what they know and what's familiar to them, and that's why sort of nostalgic brands in particular often sort of come back really strongly during times like this. So it's just important for entrepreneurs to know that.
Great. We do have some more questions in the chat, but also want to give people on the call an opportunity to unmute and ask if you have any questions. We can certainly keep going with the questions coming through. Okay, well, I will revisit these. So wondering if there are certain categories that you're seeing brick and mortar be more open to in terms of innovative products, perhaps as Popcorners thinks about future product launches, or different areas of the store that you're considering getting into, or in your past experience with other brands. Do you find that grocery is interested in particularly interested in certain categories for new product brand adoption?
Yeah, and I'll speak broadly, not necessarily just about Popcorners, but I mean, I think about this broadly. I mean, for many years now, the perimeter has been the hot place to play, and you would want to be really developing and selling a product that sort of plays to those traffic patterns and those trends. Having said that, retailers understand the challenge that they're having in center store. So I do think there's somewhat of a conflict here. On the one hand, I'd rather be selling a product in a high traffic perimeter area. That tends to be where a lot of the fresh foods are as well, which is a huge trend. But I think anyone that comes forward with solutions in center store are probably going to break through, because people are looking for solutions to sort of bring back sales from center store.
Great. So another question, more on the topic of kind of your particular category with Popcorners. How did you find your sort of target customers, and how did you get onto the shelves as an early stage brand at the time that you were an early stage brand?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't get everything right from the start. So we made a couple of moves and we learned a lot along the way. So I think it was a combination of getting into the market, mixing it up. I think whenever you can get firsthand consumer feedback in a direct fashion in the field, that's most valuable. I mean, when you can interact with consumers who might be high users of your brand or a category, those are valuable insights. And whenever you can do that in a smaller, intimate setting, I personally think that's more valuable than traditional research. But we did a combination of traditional research, taking a hard look and a fresh look at the category. And I would say through, I'd say deep interaction with our consumer, gaining some insights that were helpful to us to target our consumer more effectively.
Great. Okay, any last questions folks would like to ask on the call? Okay, well, if no other questions, Paul, we want to thank you very much for your time and insight and helpful guidance as entrepreneurs navigate this changing climate in food. I think to your point, some businesses, this is going to be an amazing lift going forward. For others, they'll really need to sort of refine and recreate and get creative. But I'm confident we will get through this, and we will return to a time when people are out shopping, looking for new exciting brands, and participating actively in terms of being consumers that really are interested in health and wellness and new products. So thank you for your reflections and sharing your time. Thank you all for tuning in. As a quick reminder, all information, both past presentations and upcoming ones, can be found on branchfood.com/servingupsupport. This presentation particularly will be uploaded before the end of the day today. We're thrilled to have you all join us, and look forward to tomorrow's presenter, Jim Berzino, who's the co-founder of a company called Wyndham Grows, which is a food business accelerator, and he'll be speaking about cash flow management and scenario planning for future business opportunity coming out of COVID. So we're thrilled to have you join us for the remainder of the calls this week. Thank you all again, and we're always open to feedback. If you have it, info@branchfood.com, we can be reached there, and look forward to seeing you all again tomorrow. Thank you again, Paul.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul.